Howdy, dudes and dudettes. I'm just some random nude dude, and today we're going to explore one of the biggest and most mind-bending questions in all of science. Is our universe a simulation? Some scientists and philosophers believe that we might be living in a computer-generated reality, like in The Matrix or Westworld. So let's dive in and see what the naked truth about this idea really is. But before we start, I want to remind you that liking videos and subscribing to channels using those buttons, that's for losers. And you're not a loser. I mean, you're not sitting in the closet talking to yourself. Are you? Anyway, the idea that our universe might be a simulation has been around for decades, but it gained more mainstream attention in the 2000s after a philosopher named Nick Bostrom proposed his famous simulation argument. Bostrom's argument was based on three assumptions. 1. It's possible for a civilization to create advanced simulations that are indistinguishable from reality. 2. If it's possible to create such simulations, then it's likely that at least some civilizations will do so. And 3. If there are many simulations, then the odds are that we are living in one of them rather than in the real reality. Bostrom's argument has been debated and analyzed by many philosophers, physicists, and computer scientists, and it's still a topic of ongoing research and discussion. Some proponents of the simulation hypothesis point to the fact that our technology has already advanced to the point where we can create simple simulations, like video games or virtual reality environments. They argue that it's not inconceivable that a more advanced civilization could create a simulation that is indistinguishable from reality. Furthermore, some proponents of the simulation hypothesis argue that the existence of multiple universes or parallel realities, as suggested by some interpretations of quantum mechanics, there's a link to a video up there somewhere, could be evidence that our reality is a simulation. They argue that a simulation might be easier to create and manage than a real universe, and that multiple simulations could be run in parallel without the need for multiple physical universes. In this sense, a simulated reality could be a simpler and more efficient way for an advanced civilization to explore and experiment with different possibilities and scenarios. Of course, there are many critics of the simulation hypothesis as well. Some argue it's too speculative and unfalsifiable, meaning there's no way to test whether or not we're living in a simulation. Others point out that even if it is possible to create a simulation, it doesn't necessarily follow that a more advanced civilization would be interested in doing so. Still others argue that the simulation hypothesis is too anthropocentric, meaning that it assumes that an advanced civilization would be interested in creating a simulation that simulates human-like beings and environments. Despite the criticism, the simulation hypothesis remains a fascinating and thought-provoking idea that raises fundamental questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and existence. The idea that our universe might be a simulation has permeated popular culture in many forms, from books and movies to video games and TV shows. Here's a few examples. 1. The Matrix. Perhaps the most well-known example of the simulation hypothesis in popular culture is the movie The Matrix. In the film, humans are living in a simulated reality created by intelligent machines, while their physical bodies are kept in pods and used as a source of energy for the machines. The protagonist, Neo, discovers the true nature of his reality and joins a rebellion against the machines. 2. Westworld. The TV series Westworld explores the theme of simulated reality in a different way. In the show, humans visit a theme park populated by androids who are programmed to simulate human behavior and emotions. The androids are so lifelike that visitors often can't tell them apart from real humans. And the show raises questions about the nature of consciousness, free will, and the ethics of creating artificial beings. 3. The Sims. The video game series The Sims allows players to create and control virtual people, or Sims, and simulate their lives in a virtual world. The game has been incredibly popular since its release in 2000 and has spawned numerous sequels and expansions. While The Sims is not explicitly about the simulation hypothesis, it does allow players to create and control a simulated reality that resembles our own. Number 4. Ready Player One. The novel Ready Player One by Ernest Cline is set in the future, where most people spend most of their time in a virtual reality world called the Oasis. The Oasis is so realistic and immersive that many people prefer it to the real world, and the story revolves around a contest to find a hidden Easter egg within the Oasis that will give the finder control over the virtual world. These examples show that the simulation hypothesis is a popular and enduring idea that has captured the imagination of creators and audiences alike. Whether in the form of a dystopian sci-fi movie or a video game that lets players create their own virtual worlds, the concept of a simulated reality raises fascinating questions about what is real and what is not, and challenges us to rethink our assumptions about the nature of reality and consciousness. The simulation hypothesis raises numerous implications and debates, both philosophical and practical. Here are a few of the most notable. 1. The nature of reality. If our universe is a simulation, then what is the nature of the real reality that exists beyond it? Is it possible to ever know or understand that reality? The simulation hypothesis challenges our assumptions about the nature of reality and what we can know about it. Number 2, the concept of free will. If our universe is a simulation, then to what extent do we really have free will? Are our actions and choices predetermined by the programmers of the simulation? The simulation hypothesis raises questions about the nature of free will and whether it is truly possible. Number 3, the ethics of creating simulations. If we are capable of creating simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, then what are the ethical implications of doing so? Would it be moral to create a simulated reality populated by conscious beings? The simulation hypothesis forces us to consider the ethical implications of our technological capabilities. Number 4, the possibility of breaking out of the simulation. If our universe is a simulation, then is it possible to break out of it and access the real reality beyond? The simulation hypothesis has led some to speculate about the possibility of finding ways to escape the simulation or communicate with the programmers. Number 5, the limitations of science and knowledge. The simulation hypothesis challenges our understanding of what's possible and what we can know about the world around us. It raises questions about the limitations of science and knowledge and whether there are fundamental aspects of reality that we will never be able to understand or access. Despite the fascinating and thought-provoking implications of the simulation hypothesis, it remains a topic of ongoing debate and controversy. Controversy for those of you in England. Critics argue that the hypothesis is too speculative or unfalsifiable, meaning that there's no way to test whether or not we're living in a simulation. Others argue that even if the simulation hypothesis is true, it doesn't necessarily have any practical implications for our daily lives. Despite these criticisms, the simulation hypothesis continues to captivate the imagination of scientists, philosophers, and the general public alike. Whether it's seen as a fascinating thought experiment or a serious challenge to our understanding of reality, the simulation hypothesis forces us to confront fundamental questions about the nature of existence, consciousness, and the limits of human knowledge. As technology continues to advance and our understanding of the universe deepens, the simulation hypothesis is likely to remain a topic of ongoing debate and speculation. Here are a few potential developments that could shape the future of the hypothesis. Number 1, advancements in computing power. As computing power continues to increase, it may become possible to create simulations that are even more realistic and indistinguishable from reality. This could lend more credence to the simulation hypothesis and make it even more difficult to determine whether or not we are living in one. 2. Progress in quantum computing. Quantum computing could potentially provide new insights into the nature of reality and the possibility of a simulated universe. Some physicists have even suggested that the fundamental nature of the universe may be quantum information, which could lend support to the simulation hypothesis. Number 3, discoveries in fundamental physics. Our understanding of fundamental physics is constantly evolving, and new discoveries could shed light on the nature of the universe and whether or not it is a simulation. For example, if physicists were to discover evidence of a glitch in the fabric of reality that could not be explained by traditional physics, it could suggest that we are living in a simulated universe. Perhaps black holes are those glitches. Number 4, further philosophical and ethical debates. As the simulation hypothesis continues to be discussed and debated, it is likely that new philosophical and ethical questions will arise. For example, how would the discovery that we're living in a simulation impact our sense of purpose and meaning in life? Would it change the way we view ourselves and our place in the universe? Number 5, new scientific experiments and studies. As technology continues to advance, it may become possible to conduct new scientific experiments and studies that could shed light on the nature of reality and the possibility of a simulated universe. For example, scientists could attempt to simulate the creation of a universe within a computer program to see if it is possible to create a simulation that is truly indistinguishable from reality. Regardless of how the simulation hypothesis evolves in the future, it's clear that it will continue to be a topic of fascination and debate for years to come. As we continue to explore the mysteries of the universe and the limits of human knowledge, the possibility that we are living in a simulated universe will remain a tantalizing and thought-provoking idea. While the simulation hypothesis has captured the imagination of many people, there are also several counterarguments that have been raised against it. Here are some of the most common counterarguments. 1. The lack of evidence. The simulation hypothesis is unfalsifiable, meaning there's no way to prove or disprove it. There is currently no evidence to support the idea that we're living in a simulation, and until such evidence is found, the hypothesis remains purely speculative. A thought experiment. Number 2, Occam's razor. The principle of Occam's razor states that the simplest explanation is usually the most likely to be true. The simulation hypothesis is a complex explanation that requires the existence of a higher-level reality and advanced technology beyond our current understanding. Therefore, it is less likely to be true than simpler explanations for the nature of the universe. Number 3, the anthropic principle. The anthropic principle suggests that the universe appears to be finely tuned to the existence of life. If our universe is a simulation, then it would mean that the programmers intentionally created a universe that would support life. This raises questions about the motivations and intentions of the programmers and why they would create a universe that is capable of supporting conscious beings. Is this really a counterargument, or is this an argument in favor? Comments below. Number 4, the problem of infinite regress. If our universe is a simulation, then it is possible that a higher-level reality that created it is itself a simulation, and so on in an infinite regress. This raises the question of where the original reality that started the chain came from, and whether it's possible for an infinite regress to exist. Number 5, the nature of consciousness. If our universe is a simulation, then it raises questions about the nature of consciousness and whether it can be artificially created. Some argue that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality that cannot be simulated or replicated. Despite these counterarguments, the simulation hypothesis remains a fascinating and thought-provoking idea that continues to capture the imagination of scientists, philosophers, and the general public. While it may never be possible to prove or disprove the hypothesis, it raises important questions. The question of whether or not we are living in a simulated universe is one that has fascinated and perplexed scientists, philosophers, and the general public for decades. While the simulation hypothesis is purely speculative and currently unfalsifiable, there are several arguments and thought experiments that have been put forth in support of the idea. One of the most famous thought experiments in support of the simulation hypothesis is known as the simulation argument, which was put forth by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003. The argument is based on the assumption that civilizations are likely to reach a stage of technological development where they are capable of creating realistic simulations in their own universe. Bostrom argues that if this is the case, then it is likely we're living in a simulation, as the number of simulated universes would greatly outnumber the single, real universe. Another argument in support of the simulation hypothesis is based on the idea that our universe appears to be composed of digital information at its most fundamental level. The discovery of phenomena, such as quantum entanglement and the holographic principle, have led some physicists to suggest that the universe may be a digital simulation. There are also several cultural references in works of fiction that have explored the possibility of a simulated universe. The popular movie franchise The Matrix depicts a dystopian future in which humans are unknowingly living in a simulated reality created by machines. The video game series Assassin's Creed explores the idea of a virtual reality machine that allows users to experience the memories of their ancestors. The TV show The Black Mirror has also explored the theme of simulated reality in several episodes. Despite the arguments and thought experiments in support of the simulation hypothesis, there are also several counter-arguments and criticisms that have been raised against it, as we discussed earlier. Ultimately, the question of whether or not we're living in a simulation remains unanswered and may never be definitively proven or disproven. The simulation hypothesis is a fascinating and thought-provoking idea that raises important questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and the limits of human knowledge. While it may never be possible to determine whether or not we're living in a simulated universe, the ongoing exploration and debate of the hypothesis will continue to shape our understanding of the universe and our place within it. One argument in support of the simulation hypothesis is based on the speed of light constant, which is the fundamental constant of nature that governs the speed at which light travels in a vacuum. The speed of light constant is a critical component of many physical theories, including Einstein's theory of relativity. According to the simulation hypothesis, our universe is a digital simulation created by a higher-level reality. If this is the case, then it would make sense that the programmers would choose to implement a speed of light constant as a fundamental feature of the simulated universe. In other words, the speed of light constant could be viewed as a hard-coded feature of the simulation. Furthermore, some proponents of the simulation hypothesis argue that the speed of light constant is too perfect to be a coincidence. In our universe, the speed of light constant is exactly 299,792,458 meters per second, and it is the same for all observers, regardless of their relative motion. This is a remarkable fact, and it means that the speed of light constant is independent of the motion of the source or observer. If our universe is a simulation, then the speed of light constant could be viewed as a deliberate design choice by the programmers. One possible explanation for this consistency is that the speed of light represents the maximum speed at which information can be transmitted within the simulated universe. If the processing speed of the computer running the simulation were slower than the speed of light, then the simulated universe would experience a delay between the time of changes made in the simulation and the time it is observed by the simulated entities. Therefore, some argue that the precision and consistency of the speed of light constant are evidence of an intelligent designer, rather than a natural phenomenon that arose through chance. However, as with any argument in support of the simulation hypothesis, there are also counter-arguments and criticisms that have been raised against the idea. Some argue that the speed of light constant could simply be a fundamental aspect of the universe rather than evidence of a simulation. Others point out that the simulation hypothesis is currently unfalsifiable, meaning there's no way to prove or disprove it. While the speed of light constant is an intriguing feature of our universe that has led some to consider it as evidence for the simulation hypothesis, it remains a topic of debate and discussion among scientists and philosophers. Ultimately, the question of whether or not the universe is a simulation may never be definitively answered. But the ongoing exploration of the idea will continue to shape our understanding of the universe and our place within it. While the simulation hypothesis remains a topic of debate, there are several pieces of evidence that some proponents of the hypothesis point to as support for their claims. One of the most well-known pieces of evidence for the simulation hypothesis is the simulation argument put forward by Nick Bostrom in 2003. The argument proposes that at least one of the following propositions must be true. A. The human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. B. Any post-human civilization is unlikely to run a significant number of simulations on their evolutionary history. C. We are almost certainly living in a simulation. The simulation argument is based on the assumption that it is possible for advanced civilizations to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality. If this is the case, then it's reasonable to assume that there are many more simulated realities than actual physical ones. Therefore, the argument suggests that it is more likely we are living in a simulation than in the real world. Another piece of evidence that has been cited to support the simulation hypothesis is the strange behavior of particles at the quantum level. Quantum physics describes a reality that is fundamentally different from the classical macroscopic world we are familiar with. Particles at the quantum level can exist in multiple states at the same time, and their behavior is inherently unpredictable. They suggest that the simulation's programming is optimized to save processing power and only renders the details of the universe when they are being observed. In this way, the simulation can appear continuous and smooth at the macroscopic level, while particles at the quantum level are rendered in a more simplified way. The fine-tuning of the universe is another argument used in support of the simulation hypothesis. The universe is finely tuned with a set of fundamental physical constraints that are precisely calibrated to allow for the existence of life. For example, the ratio of the strong nuclear force to the electromagnetic force must be just right for atoms to exist, and the expansion rate of the universe must be finely tuned to allow for galaxies to form. Proponents of the simulation hypothesis argue that the precise calibration of the universe's physical constraints is evidence of a designer who programmed the simulation to allow for life to exist. The simulation hypothesis suggests that our universe is not the result of random chance, but rather the product of an intentional design. Another piece of evidence cited by some supporters of the simulation hypothesis is the existence of glitches and anomalies in our reality. For example, some people report experiences of déjà vu or paranormal phenomena that cannot be explained by current scientific understanding. While glitches and anomalies are not conclusive evidence of a simulated reality, some proponents of the simulation hypothesis argue that they are consistent with the idea that our reality is a programmed simulation. In a simulation, glitches and anomalies can occur when the programming code has errors or is incomplete. There are several pieces of evidence that some proponents of the simulation hypothesis use to support their claims. However, it's important to note that none of these pieces of evidence are conclusive proof of a simulated reality, and there are many counterarguments and criticisms that have been raised against the idea. Ultimately, the question of whether or not our universe is a simulation remains open and requires further exploration and investigation. If the simulation hypothesis were true, it would mean that the reality we experience is not a physical, material reality, but rather a programmed simulation. This would have significant implications for our understanding of physics, as many of the physical laws and constraints we currently take for granted may be the result of the simulation's programming, rather than fundamental properties of the universe. Here are a few ways in which our understanding of physics might change if the simulation hypothesis were true. 1. The nature of space and time. In a simulated reality, the concepts of space and time may be fundamentally different from what we currently understand. For example, the simulation may be programmed to only render the details of the universe when they are being observed, which could mean that the universe only exists when it is being observed. This would have profound implications for our understandings of causality and the nature of reality. Number 2, the laws of physics. Many of the physical laws and constraints we currently take for granted may be the result of the simulation's programming rather than fundamental properties of the universe. For example, the speed of light may not be a fundamental constant, but rather the maximum processing speed of the computer running the simulation. Other constants, such as the gravitational constant or the Planck constant, may also be the result of the simulation's programming. Maybe the Planck's constant is a pixel. Number 3, quantum mechanics. If our reality is a programmed simulation, it's possible that the strange behavior of particles at the quantum level is the result of the simulation's programming rather than a fundamental property of the universe. The simulation may be programmed to only render details of particles when they are being observed, which would explain why particles at the quantum level can exist in multiple states at the same time, and their behavior is inherently unpredictable. Number 4, simulation interference. If our reality is a programmed simulation, it may be possible for the programmers to interfere with the simulation. This could manifest as glitches and anomalies in our reality, or even as intentional changes to the simulation's programming. This could have profound implications for our understanding of free will and the nature of reality. If the simulation hypothesis were true, it would have significant implications for our understanding of physics and the nature of reality. However, it is more important to note that the simulation hypothesis is still a topic of debate among scientists and philosophers, and there is currently no conclusive evidence to support or disprove the idea. The simulation hypothesis proposes that our reality is a programmed simulation created by an advanced civilization or beings, and shares some similarities with religious beliefs such as intelligent design or creationism, which proposes that the universe and all life within it were created by an intelligent being or beings. One of the main similarities between the simulation hypothesis and religious beliefs such as intelligent design or creationism is the idea of creation by an intelligent being. Both theories propose that the universe and all life within it were created with a specific purpose or design in mind, rather than simply arising from random choice. Another similarity is the idea of purpose or meaning in our existence beyond what can be observed or measured through science. The simulation hypothesis proposes that our reality is a programmed simulation, and that there may be a deeper purpose or meaning to our existence beyond what we can observe or measure with our current scientific tools. Similarly, many religious beliefs propose that there is a spiritual or supernatural aspect to reality that cannot be observed or measured through science, and that there may be a deeper purpose or meaning in our existence beyond what can be explained by physical laws. However, there are also significant differences between the simulation hypothesis and religious beliefs such as intelligent design or creationism. One key difference is testability. The simulation hypothesis is a scientifically testable theory, meaning that it can be tested through experiments and observations. For example, scientists could attempt to detect glitches or errors in the simulation, or look for evidence of simulation interference in quantum mechanics experiments. In contrast, intelligent design or creationism is not a testable scientific theory, as it relies on faith and cannot be tested or falsified through empirical methods. Another significant difference is the source of creation. The simulation hypothesis proposes that our reality was created by a technologically advanced civilization or beings, while religious beliefs typically propose that the universe was created by a divine or supernatural entity. The nature of the creator also differs, as the simulation hypothesis proposes a technologically advanced civilization or beings, while religious beliefs propose a divine or supernatural entity. Of course, that may just be semantics. Finally, there is a difference in the nature of reality itself. The simulation hypothesis proposes that our reality is a programmed simulation, and that the universe and all matter within it are ultimately composed of digital bits of information. In contrast, religious beliefs typically propose that our reality is physical and material in nature, with a spiritual or supernatural aspect beyond what can be observed or measured through science. The simulation hypothesis and religious beliefs such as intelligence, design, or creationism share some similarities, including the concept of creation by an intelligent being and the idea of purpose or meaning beyond what can be observed or measured through science. However, there are also significant differences between the two, particularly in terms of testability and the nature of the creator and reality itself. The simulation hypothesis is a scientifically testable theory proposing that our reality is a programmed simulation, while religious beliefs rely on faith and propose a physical and/or supernatural source of creation. Ultimately, while both the simulation hypothesis and religious beliefs attempt to answer questions about the origin and meaning of our existence, they differ in their approach and underlying assumptions. So there you have it. The simulation hypothesis and its potential implications on our understanding of reality. While the idea that we may be living in a programmed simulation is still considered a controversial and unproven theory, it's an intriguing concept that challenges our fundamental assumptions about the nature of existence. Whether or not the simulation hypothesis is ultimately proven to be true, the pursuit of understanding our universe and our place within it is a fascinating and ongoing journey. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed our exploration of the simulation hypothesis. Do you think we're living in a simulation? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay curious, stay naked. Peace out. Don't forget, clicking the like and subscribe buttons below, that's for losers. Don't be a loser.